She was on top of the world. Barbara Mandrell wasn't just a star, she was a supernova in a rhinestone suit, one of the most electrifying performers country music had ever seen. A multi-instrumental prodigy, a chart-topping vocalist, a trailblazer who could outsing, outplay, and outperform just about anyone. By the time she was in her 30s, she'd sold millions of records, shattered glass ceilings, and built an empire of fans who adored her. Then, almost overnight, she disappeared. No farewell tour, no dramatic fall from grace, no controversy, just silence. And that silence left behind a mystery that's echoed for decades. Why would someone who fought so hard to rise, who sacrificed so much to reach the top, suddenly walk away at her peak? What happened to Barbara Mandrell? Did she burn out? Was it personal tragedy? Or was it something deeper, a truth that couldn't be expressed on stage? This is not just a story about fame. It's not just about music. This is the story of a woman who was born to be great, pushed to be perfect, and ultimately chose to be free. A story that will take you behind the cameras, beneath the sequins, and into the heart of someone who conquered the world and then gave it up. Because the real question isn't why she walked away, it's what it cost her to stay. The date alone felt like a prophecy. Barbara Ann Mandrell was born on Christmas Day, 1948, in Houston, Texas, a symbolic entrance for someone destined to be a gift to the world of music. But the Mandrell household wasn't the kind of place where gifts were unwrapped and admired. They were honed, sharpened, pressured into brilliance. From the moment she could stand, Barbara's life was orchestrated by two powerful forces, her father, Irby Mandrell, and her mother, Mary Ellen. Irby wasn't just a musician, he was a visionary, a shrewd guitarist and military man with a sharp ear and even sharper ambition. He believed Barbara had been born for greatness, and he made it his mission to ensure she didn't just reach it, she owned it. Mary Ellen, on the other hand, was the quieter current, a piano teacher, a woman of discipline and calm who taught Barbara her first melodies. But behind that soft demeanor was a steely resolve. Her daughter would not be ordinary. Together, they formed a kind of unrelenting symphony, one that didn't just raise Barbara, but molded her. Music wasn't encouraged, it was enforced. By age 5, Barbara was already training on the accordion and piano. By age 6, the steel guitar. By 7, she was mastering instruments most adults couldn't dream of playing. Her after-school routine didn't involve cartoons or bike rides. It was hours of practice under the relentless eyes of parents who expected nothing less than perfection. And perfection came at a cost. Barbara's tiny hands would bleed from long rehearsals. Her back would ache from holding instruments twice her size. She'd wake up with sore muscles and go to bed with the sound of scales still ringing in her ears. But she never said a word, because complaining wasn't allowed. Not in the Mandrell house. The pressure wasn't just external. Even as a child, Barbara felt it inside, an intense, almost unexplainable drive to not let anyone down. Not her parents, not herself. From the outside, she looked like a musical prodigy, but on the inside, she was a child grappling with a burden she couldn't yet name. What if this wasn't really her dream? Still, the results were undeniable. At just 11 years old, Barbara earned the nickname Princess of Steel for her uncanny mastery of the steel guitar, one of the most complex instruments in music. She played with a confidence and depth that stunned grown men in the business. People weren't just impressed, they were shocked. But that title, as glamorous as it sounded, was also a brand, a label that stuck. Because when you're called a princess at 11, people stop seeing the child underneath the crown. They stop asking what you want, and they start expecting you to deliver again and again and again. Her father, sensing her potential, didn't hesitate. He opened a music store in Oceanside, California, turning their family's entire world into a business of talent. The store was more than a storefront, it was a training ground. Barbara wasn't just the daughter of a musician anymore. She was an investment, a future, a name in lights that hadn't been hung yet. And while other kids her age were playing hopscotch or planning birthday parties, Barbara was spending hours alone in practice rooms, perfecting the steel guitar, the saxophone, the banjo, and more. She became a one-girl band, not by accident, but by design. As the stakes rose, so did the pressure. Irby booked her early performances, then tours, then national appearances. Barbara was suddenly playing alongside country legends, grown men in boots and hats twice her size, clapping in awe as this quiet preteen blew them off the stage. To the world, she was living a dream. To Barbara, it sometimes felt like she was living someone else's. Late at night, long after the crowds had gone, she'd lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, too tired to cry, too wired to sleep. And deep in those moments, a single question echoed louder than any applause. If I wasn't good at this, would they still love me? Barbara Mandrell wasn't even a teenager when the world started watching. By the time she was 13, she wasn't just performing in talent shows, she was touring the country with actual legends. Johnny Cash, Patsy Cline, George Jones, not as a novelty act, but as a respected peer. A child, yes, but one with the stage presence of a seasoned veteran. Her hands moved across the steel guitar like they'd been playing for lifetimes. Her voice, though still young, carried a depth and control that left audiences speechless. But here's the part the public never saw. Barbara Mandrell's youth was traded for applause. She missed out on slumber parties, after-school hangouts, and first dances. While her classmates were navigating crushes and classroom gossip, Barbara was navigating backstage politics and high-stakes performances. By 14, she was already dealing with jealous peers in the industry, adults twice her age whispering that her success was manufactured, or worse, unearned. Even on stage, where the lights were brightest and the cheers the loudest, she felt it. That sense of being watched not with admiration, but with suspicion. As if her talent wasn't real, as if her drive was something that had been drilled into her, not something she truly owned. That tension only grew when her father took things a step further and created the Mandrell family band. It sounded sweet, a wholesome all-American act featuring Barbara on steel guitar and vocals, her mother on piano, her younger sister Louise on guitar, and baby sister Arlene on drums. But behind the family-friendly branding was an even tighter grip on Barbara's life. Now, the stage wasn't just her personal pressure cooker, it was a family business. They toured relentlessly. County fairs, VFW halls, military bases across the globe through USO shows. The family was praised for their discipline, their charm, their sheer talent. But for Barbara, each standing ovation came with a heavier weight. Was she still performing because she loved it or because she had to? At night, in strange hotel rooms with her guitar propped against the wall, Barbara would lie awake wondering what it would feel like to not be needed by a crowd, to not have to be on, to not have to earn love through performance. She'd spent her entire life playing someone else's set list. The question burned quietly. Who was Barbara Mandrell when the music stopped? Still, she kept going. Not because she was forced, she was far too talented to be pushed, but because it was all she'd ever known. The applause, the pressure, the identity of being Barbara Mandrell, the star. And then unexpectedly, someone came along who made her wonder if a different life was even possible. He wasn't a producer. He wasn't a record label executive. He wasn't even in the spotlight. Ken Dudney was a quiet, steady presence, a Navy pilot with calm eyes and a kind heart who had once played drums in the Mandrell family band. They met when Barbara was still balancing school with sound checks, and in him, she saw something she'd never experienced on the road: peace. At just 19 years old, Barbara did something shocking for someone so deeply embedded in the entertainment world. She got married. No PR fanfare, no staged media event, just a private ceremony and a bold choice to step outside the path that had been mapped for her since childhood. For a moment, she believed she could leave it all behind. Barbara dreamed of stability, a home, children, a kitchen that didn't move every few weeks, a life where she didn't need to earn rest. And for a time, that dream seemed within reach. But music doesn't leave you alone, not when it's in your bones. A visit to the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville changed everything. As she stood in the wings, hearing those familiar country chords, the roar of the crowd, and the hum of history in the air, something woke up inside her, something she had tried to suppress. It wasn't fame she missed, it was purpose. Music wasn't just something she did, it was who she was. Barbara realized then the dream of a quiet life would never be complete without her first love, the stage. And this time, it wouldn't be as her father's creation or her family's centerpiece. It would be as her own artist. With Ken's full support and her father's tireless belief in her potential, Barbara signed with Columbia Records in 1969. The label wasn't expecting a revolution, but that's what they got. Her debut single, I've Been Loving You Too Long, a bold reinterpretation of Otis Redding's soul classic, immediately raised eyebrows. This wasn't a safe country ballad. This was a fire-lit confession, raw and full of feeling. Barbara had taken a sacred R&B staple and filtered it through a Southern lens, blending genres with fearless precision. It was a message to the industry. She wasn't here to copy, she was here to create. Her first album, Treat Him Right, followed in 1971. Songs like Playing Around with Love and Show Me weren't just catchy, they were personal. They carried the weight of a young woman who had lived through performance, expectation, and emotional exhaustion, and was finally choosing to say something of her own. Barbara wasn't just back, she was reborn. And what came next would shake country music to its core. By the mid-1970s, Barbara Mandrell wasn't content with being a rising star. She was ready to change the rules. After a solid but cautious start with Columbia Records, she made a bold move that would redefine her career, leaving for ABC Records in 1975. It was a risky decision, but it brought her into partnership with producer Tom Collins, a forward-thinking maverick who saw in Barbara not just a singer, but a revolutionary. Together, they created something country music had never quite seen before. Their first major collaboration, Standing Room Only, stormed the charts and introduced fans to a new Barbara. Sleek, soulful, and unafraid to blend genres. It was country, yes, but with the emotional fire of R&B and the confidence of pop. Barbara wasn't just singing about heartbreak, she was owning it. Her shows evolved into full-blown spectacles, elaborate costume changes, choreographed routines, multi-instrument performances. She wasn't just a vocalist anymore. She was a one-woman powerhouse. On stage, Barbara could switch from steel guitar to saxophone to banjo without missing a beat. While many artists stuck to the mic, she commanded the room, and fans loved it. Loved. Between 1976 and 1979, she released a cascade of hits: Married but Not to Each Other, Tonight My Baby's Coming Home, and the career-defining Sleeping Single in a Double Bed, which hit #1 in 1978. Her music tackled real issues: infidelity, loneliness, vulnerability, not from the sidelines but from the front lines. Then came If Loving You Is Wrong, I Don't Want to Be Right, a passionate, unapologetic anthem of forbidden love. It shocked traditionalists, it thrilled audiences, and it confirmed what Barbara had become: a woman rewriting country music from the inside out. While male artists were celebrated for breaking molds, Barbara had to fight for her right to evolve. But she didn't just push the genre forward, she pulled it with her until everything came to a sudden, shattering halt. On September 11th, 1984, Barbara's world split in two. She was driving home to Nashville with her two children when tragedy struck. A 19-year-old driver, Mark White, crossed the center line and collided head-on with her car. The crash was devastating. Mark White died instantly. Barbara and her children survived, but barely. Barbara suffered a broken leg, a crushed ankle, and a traumatic brain injury. The damage wasn't just physical. She experienced memory loss, confusion, and emotional disorientation, symptoms that would linger far beyond the surgeries and the scars. For a woman whose entire life had revolved around control of her voice, her body, her career, the aftermath was terrifying. "I lost a part of myself," she would later say. For the first time, Barbara Mandrell wasn't sure who she was, or whether she'd ever be whole again. The recovery was long and brutal, over a year of physical therapy, emotional setbacks, and private grief. And when she finally began to emerge from the worst of it, another challenge came crashing in: public backlash. Due to Tennessee insurance law, Barbara was required to sue the deceased driver's estate to access her own medical coverage. It was a cold legal formality, but to the public it looked like cruelty. Headlines twisted the story, fans turned. The woman who had once been beloved now faced whispers of selfishness. She didn't retaliate. She stayed silent. She focused on her healing, on her children, and on rediscovering who she was beneath the fame. But she didn't stay gone. Just 8 months after the crash, Barbara made a quiet but powerful return to the stage. At a charity concert with Dolly Parton, she sang again, trembling but unbroken. She didn't come back for applause. She came back because she could. And from that moment on, Barbara Mandrell wasn't just a star. She was a survivor, one with a new mission: to protect lives. She became a national spokesperson for seatbelt safety, sharing her story in public campaigns and TV spots. "If it weren't for seatbelts," she said, "my children and I wouldn't be here." The woman who had once played the steel guitar with flawless precision was now wielding something even more powerful: a story that could save lives. Barbara Mandrell could have quit after the crash and no one would have blamed her, but she didn't. She came back stronger, wiser, and more self-aware than ever before. Her return to the stage wasn't just a comeback, it was a reclamation. She didn't need to prove anything anymore, but she did. Night after night, she showed audiences that pain hadn't stolen her voice, it had given it more weight. The hits kept coming. Years, Crackers, and perhaps, most famously, I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool. The song was more than a single, it was a statement. It was Barbara taking ownership of the trail she had blazed long before it was fashionable. And it struck a chord. Fans saw themselves in her lyrics: the outsiders, the believers, the ones who had held fast to tradition in a world racing forward. In 1980 and 1981, Barbara achieved something no female country artist had done before. She won Entertainer of the Year from the Country Music Association twice in a row. It wasn't just an accolade, it was a coronation. And then, just as quickly as she'd returned, Barbara began to step back. There wasn't a single moment, no big announcement at first, but those closest to her noticed the shift. The relentless touring began to slow. The recording sessions became less frequent. Something had changed, not in her talent that remained untouched, but in her priorities. In 1997, Barbara did what few in her position have ever dared. She walked away. No scandal, no decline, no industry pressure. She simply chose to leave at the height of her power because she wanted to live a life that didn't revolve around stages, sound checks, or fan expectations. She sold her instruments, she turned off the lights, and she went home. Her final show, The Last Dance, took place at the Grand Ole Opry, the very place where her love for music had first reignited decades earlier. The performance was a celebration, not a goodbye soaked in sadness. but a joyful release. A packed house rose to its feet again and again as Barbara played her final chords beneath a cascade of golden lights. As the applause faded, she smiled. Not because she was saying farewell, because she was finally free. Retirement didn't dim Barbara Mandrell's light, it revealed where it truly shined. At home in Nashville, on a sprawling ranch surrounded by trees, dogs, and quiet, Barbara found a rhythm that had nothing to do with music. She devoted herself to the role she'd long dreamed of embracing fully, mother. Her three children, Kenneth, Jamie, and Nathaniel, became her world. She helped with homework. She packed school lunches. She was there for the small, quiet moments that had once slipped past her in hotel rooms and dressing areas. And at the center of it all was her husband, Ken Dudney, her constant through decades of noise. While fans saw the glamorous star, Ken had always seen the woman beneath it all. Their marriage, built in youth, weathered fame, tragedy, and the pressure of legacy, and it endured. Though she no longer toured or recorded, Barbara didn't abandon music. She performed occasionally at church, her voice now softer, but more grounded. A voice no longer needing validation, just expression. She sang hymns, she led worship, and in those small sanctuaries, she found the same sense of purpose that once filled stadiums. She also poured her heart into charity work, especially causes close to her experience: seatbelt safety, veteran support, child welfare. Fame had given her a platform. Now she used it for others. In 2009, the country music world came together once more to honor her with induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame. It was a long overdue recognition, made bittersweet by the recent loss of her father, Irby Mandrell, the man who had started it all. Barbara stood on stage with tears in her eyes and pride in her voice. "The name Mandrell is the legacy my father left me," she said, "and I am proud to carry it into the Hall of Fame." Later in 2022, she made a rare public appearance at the Grand Ole Opry, celebrating 50 years since she first joined the institution. She didn't sing that night. She didn't have to. Watching younger stars like Carrie Underwood and CeCe Winans perform her songs, Barbara simply sat in the front row, eyes shining, as the crowd paid tribute to a legend who had never needed the spotlight to shine. Her former home, the Fontanelle Mansion, was open to the public as a living museum, filled with memories, music, and the unmistakable spirit of a woman who once ruled country music, and then walked away on her own terms. Because Barbara Mandrell didn't need to chase the spotlight. She was the light. Fame fades, charts change, the music industry constantly reinvents itself. But some names, some stories, refuse to disappear. Barbara Mandrell is one of them. Even after more than 2 decades out of the public eye, her influence is everywhere. You can hear it in the confidence of female country artists who now push genre boundaries with pride. You can see it in the spectacle of modern performances, the choreographed routines, the costume changes, the showmanship. Long before it was the standard, Barbara said it. Artists like Faith Hill, Carrie Underwood, and Shania Twain have openly credited Barbara for opening doors they were once told would stay shut. Carrie once said, "Barbara paved the way for artists like me to dream bigger." And she did, not just by singing louder or dressing flashier, but by standing tall in rooms where women weren't supposed to lead. But maybe her greatest legacy has nothing to do with music at all. Barbara Mandrell showed us something we rarely see in show business: a graceful exit. She proved that walking away from the spotlight can be an act of power, not surrender. That family, faith, and personal peace aren't a retirement plan, but a purpose. That being great doesn't mean being seen all the time. It means knowing when to stop performing and start living. She didn't chase attention. She didn't stage a comeback. She didn't need to. Because her story was never really about the applause. It was about the woman behind the curtain, the one who bled for her art, healed through her pain, and ultimately found the courage to let go. The one who dared to ask, what if being whole matters more than being famous? And in doing so, Barbara Mandrell didn't just inspire generations of musicians. She gave everyone permission to chase something deeper than applause. Barbara Mandrell's story isn't just about country music. It's about resilience, reinvention, and the quiet power of knowing who you are when the noise stops. She was a prodigy, a pioneer, a survivor, a wife, a mother, and above all, a woman who lived life on her own terms. She left the stage, but her spirit never left us. So now we want to hear from you. What part of Barbara Mandrell's journey resonated with you the most? Did her story inspire you to rethink what success really looks like? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story as powerful as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's make sure that Barbara Mandrell's light never fades, not from our playlists, not from our memories, and not from the generations still to come.